No, the very beginning where it's just like,
this is not that king.
and this
This is not
waiting for you to do
age.
Yeah, no, I didn't retain any of it. Episode number 30.
Getting us in the mood.
We have myself, Mike, Palumbo, Jamin.
This is weirdly timed out well that I'm playing the song and he's playing the movie.
And Cody.
I haven't seen it yet, so I'm just trying to watch
Cody
it.
Wambolt. Yes, you have seen it.
All right, so we got some ducks.
There's like 20 minutes of ducks and goats in the beginning. I'm going to turn it
Are
on.
they friends or?
Okay, I'm going to tell the audience what we're going to be talking about. Which is the Green Knight. I left for like, 2 weeks or so, and when I come back, the angle's different. Jed has a new podcast, which by the time this comes out, you'll probably already know that, but listen to Jed's podcast, the Story Acceleration podcast. And, our podcast is getting a whole new
It's different.
face. It's
Better.
getting a whole new face. And
It took you leaving for us to realize how to make it good.
and
Well,
now
that's
we're going to be
subjective.
talking about, I think, a little bit more movies in our story, and we're trying to fine tune it. I mean, if
Yeah.
you've been listening to it, God bless you, because it's all over the place. But that's okay.
Yeah,
We're figuring it out.
We know who both of you are, and we're grateful that you've been listening.
We know who.
Thank you, Cody, in the future for watching this.
So, needless to say, The Green Knight is a beautiful film.
It is a movie.
It's very ambiguous, and there's going to be spoilers throughout this whole thing.
I literally all I wanted was to watch the title cards, but
Why?
it cut a.
Dude, you watched the movie. Why you
Yeah,
You've seen
I watched it a month.
Let's start
ago.
at the beginning.
You watched it before? Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you watched it like for this.
So we have
No,
not
I watched
talked
it a month
Even
ago.
though you watched it a month ago, I have not talked to either of you guys about this movie
Yeah.
yet.
No. Maybe 2 words.
Yeah.
You
And
said
I
Green Knight. I said okay.
I got the impression that you didn't like it, Jamin. You were kind of like, so,
I was keeping my cards close to my chest.
wearing the Crusaders shirt. How
did that?
serendipitous.
Were you saying cards because you saw cards, or did that just work out?
It just worked.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's what you get when you tune into the Votary podcast. Serendipitous moments happening left and right.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, today we're putting all our cards on the table.
Oh my god. Did you guys understand the beginning of the movie?
Hold on.
Which one? The first scene where?
No, the very beginning where it's just like,
This is not that king.
and this is
This is not
waiting for you to do
age.
Yeah, no, I didn't retain any of it.
I
was like,
literally
thi-
forgot.
I was
until
like, oh,
pulled
this
it
is
up
really
just
cool.
now.
And then he bursts into flame. It's like so poetic and beautiful, but I was like, I got the impression like, come along for a wacky ride, but I have no idea what she said.
When-
the voiceover, it was just, it was
Yeah.
literally sounded like Cody just now.
When you watch movies, well, you were in a theater, so you didn't have this option. But if
Yeah.
you're watching a movie, okay, here I'll just say what my ideal movie viewing experience is. I'm watching a movie I've never seen before, and I'm by myself, and I'm in my house, so that if I want to, I can pause the movie and go back and rewatch a scene
Sure.
before proceeding to the next scene.
I often put on subtitles just for a few lines because it drives me crazy when I don't know. Because I'll be like, oh, I skipped a line or I missed a line, I didn't understand them, and I'm like, oh, it's probably nothing.
But
It's
rarely nothing.
I do it all the time. I go back and put subtitles on, rewatch the scene, and
Yeah.
I feel like am I doing a disservice to the viewing of this movie by just not letting it do its thing and then watching it again later? But I feel like in the moment I just want to know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie was a hard one to know exactly what's going on the whole time. I think I said "what the f" to myself out loud like 6 times throughout the movie. I was like, "What the what?"
Yeah. No, it's
So you didn't like it?
No, I didn't. I
Did you like the beginning? Were you pulled in by that? Were you
I was
like, this is
I was
silly?
totally, and I did no reading, I did no research, I didn't look up David Lowry.
David Lowery.
I didn't look him up at all. Like I was just like, I'm going in cold, and we're gonna see what this is. No expectations.
Yeah.
So that was a really weird way to jump in, not having been aware of the context, and I was totally in. I was like, okay, this is like some cool medieval, like twisty stuff right from the beginning, almost like fantasy. And I caught on quickly that it was about King Arthur and that lore of King Arthur. But
Oh wow, you were in cold turkey.
right, I had no idea.
No, I didn't know it was anything to do with Camelot or King Arthur.
You didn't?
either. No, and to be honest, I mean, at risk of sounding really dumb, the movie ended and I still didn't think about that.
Wow.
The movie ended and I was just like, oh, it's about that thing. Like I didn't know. Sir Gawain. You agree? Like this is a.
I didn't know that the Green Knight
This is
poem or
a
anything.
poem.
Yeah.
So basically,
Wow.
for those who don't know, this is a poem that is an ancient poem that has a mysterious author that we don't know who wrote it, and it's this whole story, and it's this long, poetic, beautiful, apparently very modern sounding poem about this knight, Sir Gawain.
Everyone
Sir
says
Gawain.
it differently,
different,
but
yeah.
in the movie they say Gawain, right?
Gawain.
Well, King Arthur in the movie says Garwin. He's put his R.
That actor, he's also in like the latest Mission Impossible or
Yeah,
one
he's
of
good.
them, and
Yeah.
he just has that raspy, just like
I always
everything I say is gonna be much more profound because it hurts. You know, it's like
this could
there's
be my
glass-
last words.
there's glass stuck in my throat. It's never come out.
Every word is his last breath.
Everything's his dying breath. Well, in the movie, he kind of is on his deathbed
Well, it's crazy.
or
'cause-
death throne, I should say.
Yeah, because like that actor, I can't imagine he's even like maybe he's in his 50s, if not 40s, and yet him and the Queen are presented as like this really old, sickly couple, and I'm like, this dude's like 50, but he's like made to look old. That's probably on purpose because people back then that probably
gonna
was
say,
old.
Yeah, like we're talking
Yeah.
medieval times. Like there were just like rats in the stew.
Yeah, and they were just sick.
Eat up.
They were just sickly, right? Like this.
I looked up a video at one point, like saying it was just listing out all the reasons why living in a castle was probably like the worst thing ever. But it's like this historically accurate, apparently,
Yeah.
YouTube video that was just pointing out all like the disgusting and just like
no plumbing.
unsanitary and just like weird, cold, dark, disturbing aspects of like living in a castle. And I was like, huh,
That's nice.
I guess living in like a village, probably in a hut, was like actually better.
Yeah,
like
'cause
closer to the ground.
straw-
Yeah, you were just less apt to get raided and pillaged.
Well, that and it was like they just got really like dirty and gross and pretty easily. But anyway, what did you think, Jamin, of the beginning?
So for me, the context of me watching The Green Knight was a lot more than that because one, it's A24. I like David Lowery. I had been excited for the movie for quite a while. Like
A24 is the production company.
yeah. I think that I had seen the first trailer like over a year ago, and I was really excited for it.
Yeah.
And The Green Knight, I never read the full poem, but grew up with all types of Arthur tales and retellings. I think that there was a book series that I was pretty invested in at a certain point. And the Green Knight, the story of him is like a retelling of it, was like my favorite one. He was my favorite character of all of the
Really?
the Arthur and,
The Green Knight was or Gawain?
Gawain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So it was just I had hyped it up a lot in my mind, but I also knew it was going to be very, heady and folklory and very.
Ambiguous.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to. I knew A Ghost Story. I knew the director of A Ghost Story, and I liked A Ghost Story quite a bit. I've only watched it once, but it stuck with me. So that was literally all I knew.
Yeah, we watched it together.
We did at the old Votary office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me too.
It's so beautiful and like deep and poetic and simple. Yeah. that 10-minute scene with the girl eating the pie.
Yeah, classic.
Like one shot, and then she like pukes the pie out. That's
So it's like
classic cinema right there.
yeah, you watch that, you're like, okay, Green Knight, it's gonna be
Yeah, and then I got an ad
gonna be something.
on Instagram that was like that whole a creepy voiceover.
Yeah.
And it was like talking about how there's the classic poem, and it's like a retelling of this whole thing, and they went really kind of weird
With the trailer.
with like the marketing of it. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. They're making it really kind of like modern and quirky and like dry, and I didn't know how I felt about it.
They had a
just
lot
from
of
seeing
ads,
the
though.
trailer. Yeah,
A lot of different ads marketed to different people.
I follow Criterion and A24 on Instagram, and so they targeted me
Yeah.
quite well.
Yeah.
But let me paint the picture of like me seeing this movie, because I had seen that trailer, I knew about it, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to see it in theaters. And then I, kept hearing about it from people, and I couldn't make it when my friends went to the theaters to see it. And then when I was finally ready to see it, like a few weeks ago, I like look up theaters, and it's all just in like the artsy fartsy theaters out in Boston, and like the smaller theaters. And I was like, well, I didn't realize that. I'm not gonna like drive an hour and a half to see this movie by myself. And then, I'm gone in the mountains camping, and there was a couple days of like kind of rainy weather, and I'm just like driving around, and there's a small town, literal town
Are you
of
by yourself?
Bethlehem. So I ended up camping by myself.
Okay.
So I'm driving around by myself in the little town of Bethlehem, New Hampshire. And there is a tiny little movie theater there that has one screen. And I've gone to see movies there in the past. I actually saw Ex Machina there.
Wow, that's epic.
And I did not know years ago.
Just Alicia Vikander movies that's all you see.
A24 Alicia Vikander movies are the only movies that are allowed to play there. So I'm just driving around Bethlehem, like going to little shops and everything, and it's like just kind of like gray weather, and I see that The Green Knight is playing the next day at 7:30, and it was supposed to be like raining the next day, and I was just like, well, this is perfect. And I've never gone to the movies by myself in my life. I'm like, this is the perfect time to go to the movies by myself.
You're kidding.
I've never gone by myself.
I don't think I have either.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
it's just such a it makes no sense, because
I used to go all the time.
well, it makes sense to go to the movies by yourself, but it always felt depressing to me. Like,
I love it.
but yeah, no, I'm not. At this point, I'm like, I'm surprised that this was my first experience.
Yeah.
Because I don't like talking during a movie. If someone is like texting or doing anything that I'm, if I'm with someone and they're doing that when I'm watching a movie, it like takes me out of it, and I get angry, and I pause the movie, and I'm very like,
Yeah.
like, where are you right now, kind of thing. And so it would make sense that I would want to just watch movies by myself. And I'm like you, where like you described your ideal scenario for watching a movie. Me too. Like home sound system, I can go to the bathroom whenever I want, I eat whatever I want. Nobody's there, ideally.
So you watch movies by yourself all the time,
All the time.
but just never at the theater before.
Yeah, and so I was like, all right, this is going to be perfect. And I literally framed the next day around my trip. Like, I'm in the mountains. The whole thing is just to be like, just unwind, not look at my phone, not like think about like where I have to be at a certain time, not wake up at a certain time or go to bed at a certain time. But I end up going to bed really early out there and just like looking at the stars, because you can feel like the when it gets dark and you're outside around a fire, you're like, what is it, like 2 a.m? Oh, it's 8. It's like, it's crazy. So anyway, I framed like the whole day around, making it back. And I like barely made it back to my campsite, made food, and like got myself out to the theater, like we're just in time. It was $8.
Wow.
I'm like, how are you staying in business? Popcorn was $3?
Wow, I'm driving to Bethlehem now.
It's almost worth it. Yeah, it's worth it.
3-hour drive, but then $3 popcorn. I know. You just paid for my trip.
You joke, but there are people listening being like, yeah, that's a good deal.
$15 for popcorn at Blackstone.
So
Something like that.
I sit with like 3 other middle-aged couples, and I'm like, not up front, but I'm like really close. I'm definitely the closest in the theater, because I didn't want to like be distracted by anyone else.
That's the best.
And that first scene comes on, and I was just like, I'm sold. Like, I'm into this. And I knew nothing about it, and I was interested to talk about just like, aside from the fact that this is like a classic folk tale, and it's like kind of ambiguous, and it's kind of like it's definitely not like grounded in reality. I didn't know that going into it, but as you watch it, you're like, oh, there's giants, and oh, there's like talking foxes, and it's like, oh, it's like spiritual folktale. Like, does it stand on its own without a, and are the themes like so universal and like still echo like modern time? Because like I was literally just taking it in as a modern film, not thinking about it, like it being based on anything. I really didn't even know about the poem.
Yeah.
Like I had heard that in the trailer, but it wasn't really registering as I was watching it. I was like, does this like work as its standalone thing? I gotta say, the first second I saw the Green Knight, I had no idea the Green Knight was this guy who was supposed to look like a tree, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's this type of, like I was thinking I'm going into like a really grounded, almost, medieval story.
Yeah.
I
That's
thought that Sir Gawain was the Green Knight. I was like, oh, he does something and he gets
Right.
green armor.
Yeah, we're about to see his journey to becoming the Green Knight.
Like, he gets like some special armor.
Yeah.
That's like emeralds.
So
that's what I was thinking. I'm like,
Yeah.
he fights a guy
yeah.
or whatever.
Um,
And turns out, no, the Green Knight is this like almost like spiritual being that's like very
yeah,
mysterious.
it's a very mystical movie.
I think I love that about it, though, that it was mystical. And yeah, that's really interesting. I think I was very much on the other side of knowing that it was very fantastic and folktale and had all of this history that it's grounded in. So it still does have a grounding, but it's a story that was written, I guess, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Almost.
It's weird how grounded it does feel, even though
It is.
it's like so silly.
I was
silly.
laughing because, when I think King Arthur, I think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, no, I
And-
can't take
Oh
anything
my
with King
God.
Arthur seriously.
And I couldn't get Monty Python out of my head
That's
throughout
terrible.
the whole movie because
Really?
like there were even shots, right? Like when he's in the cave and there's this shot looking out of the cave into the wilderness or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, that shot's in Monty Python. Like, and like some of the landscapes.
so
Like if you
ridiculous.
actually go back and watch the Holy Grail, it's really well shot, and like they do a great job.
Well, that was part of the comedy is they would always make something that feels like, oh, this is like a real movie.
Yeah, it was really good, and there was good cinematography, and so a lot of the shots and even the music, like the Monty Python Holy Grail soundtrack, is a lot of that like violin, like really like intense.
Are you serious?
Yeah, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, this is funny to me. This is really funny. And like,
Were you not able to take it seriously?
well, I didn't take it very seriously from the jump. Like I didn't feel like
Really?
it was taking itself too seriously. I
Really?
Yeah, for some reason I felt like this is a little tongue in cheek, but it could have just been
A little bit, yeah.
It could have just been the Monty Python thing coming into
Well,
my brain.
No, I think
by
it was
the
a little
end
bit.
it definitely feels tongue in cheek. But for me, I was just locked. in.
Okay.
Like I was taking it very
The
seriously.
first scene where he catches on fire and that voice, I was like, this is kind of silly. And then
Yeah.
and then there's a 10-minute scene of goats and and ducks, and I was like,
That's the thing. It's silly, but they do such a grounded, like realistic, gritty feeling of like interpretation of something that's silly. Like the whole scene with the Green Knight coming in there and being like, here's this letter, and 1 year hence, you know, he's basically
Yeah.
saying, I cut, you
It's
can
like
you
a
can cut
game.
me anywhere. Exactly. He's presenting a game. It's like a Christmas game of cut me anywhere on my body, and in 1 year I will return the same wound, whether it be like a small cut or whether
Right.
you like cut my head off or something. But
Also,
he doesn't
how
actually say
dumb
that,
was he,
though,
though?
right?
no, he was just like, whatever you do, I'll repay it in kind. And I was like, why did he cut his head off? Like, why did he do that? Because I was
Well-
like, didn't you just hear what the dude said?
Yeah, but you're not assuming that he can just pick
give
up
him a
his
pat
head.
on the back.
You're not assuming that he can just pick up his head and just be like, haha, idiot.
Yeah, but he's a walking tree.
I know.
That's true. It's true. They at no point do they go, "Why do you look like that?" He strolls in there with a deep voice, and everyone's just like takes him so seriously. In the fire on the on the torches going out is
Yeah.
is definitely like, oh, this guy, he's of a like spiritual.
Yeah, and then it goes to that shot of the Merlin character,
Right.
and he's like looks at King Arthur and he just gives him like the no.
The no, yeah, like don't trust this guy.
And it's just like, so I don't know how much we want to go into like the plot versus just talking about what we liked and didn't like, but
Well, it's hard to do one without the
Yeah,
other, right?
when-
Like, what did you think about the mom character
well, okay,
doing
so
that whole like?
Yeah, get into it.
so upon reading up on the movie after the fact, because this was my thinking in the movie. Is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
The
go,
mom
go in order.
During watching the movie, I was like, okay, the mom is kind of bad, or she has different intentions.
So she's doing a pagan ritual as the Green Knight is coming in, and she has a letter that has green, a green stamp of wax, just like the Green Knight does, and she presents it over this sort of a pagan ritual thing, and it floats in the air, and then it bursts into flames. It's very sort of like mystical.
To me, it felt like
thing.
she and her little coven of witches were either summoning this entity known as the Green Knight, like they knew about him and they were getting him to come, or they were like creating him. And
Yeah, well, and then there's a little plant that grows after the letter bursts into flames.
yeah. So they were in
It's very like, okay, she has something to do.
one
with
way
this.
or another, whether she created him or just summoned him to come. She was responsible for him showing up.
Which honestly was one of the coolest scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time.
It is so.
It was like
cinematic.
It was just so inspiring. Like this movie was so inspiring. Like
It was beautiful, beautiful. Every shot was just like,
yes, I know. It was like a little Italian almond cookie, just like it's so good, so good.
yeah, really. It was just like I liked that it was just dark and kind of moody and just beautiful shots.
Yeah.
I think I was in the wrong spot. I kind of was sad about where I sat afterwards because I usually like to sit up front because I don't like seeing people around me and being distracted.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we sat all the way in the back.
No.
And it's just like looking down on the movie. You're like
Yeah.
not immersed in it.
No. Yeah.
But
This was like a pretty small screen, so I wanted to sit
yeah, that's
up
smart.
close, and I wanted to get the full effect of like the
Being-
probably 1975 speakers. You know,
Yeah.
old moths are like flying out of it as it
As
sounded
the power's on.
It sounded and it looked great, but the heat kept clicking on, and it would be like they'd be like talking, be like
Oh, that happened at
it was
my
like,
theater too.
click, and they'd be like, and you're just like, what are they saying?
That was
It wasn't quite Tenet level.
Oh
like-
God, you didn't watch it. You only watched it that in the theater, right?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Did you watch it in the theater?
No, I watched it at home.
How?
Amazon.
Oh.
You can rent this on Amazon for $20.
Yeah, I did.
$19.99.
And I did. So, and then to take a step back before the Green Knight scene, you kind of get to understand about our main character that he's kind of just an F up. Like he's kind of like this.
Yeah.
He's like this F boy who
F-boy.
who just gets drunk and hangs out in the brothel. And
Yeah.
it's like he's in the brothel on Christmas morning, hungover and even his
biddy?
his hooker is like, let's go to church, and he's like, all right.
Yeah.
And then he runs into his mom, and you can
It seems like she's shaming him for not going to church, but
Yeah.
then she's doing pagan rituals.
and she's like, you smell like a drunk, basically, and you
Yeah.
can just tell.
Wait, didn't she shame him for going to church? Or am I
No,
remembering it wrong?
No, like
well, he
she
says
was- she was
I'm
like-
going to church, and she's like, have fun.
well, no, she goes, where have you been? And he's like, at mass, and she's like, like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, and he's like, I'm going to the party or whatever, and she's like, yeah, have fun. I'll be doing something else. And then
I'll be summoning this Green Knight to.
and then King
mess with
Arthur
you.
spots him in the round table hall, and is like, hey, get him over here, my nephew. And then he's like, tell me,
My
he's
nephew.
like, and he's my nephew, and he's like, tell me a story about your life. Like, I feel bad that you're my nephew and I don't really know you that well. And then Gawain's like, well, I don't have any stories, and they're like, not yet.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Uh-oh.
The queen says that, and
yeah.
it almost implies that like she knows what's gonna happen, but I felt like she was just saying that as like a little encouraging thing, like
yeah.
you'll have things to do.
I think because I think he's the black sheep. Like he's King Arthur's nephew, and King Arthur is like the friggin' hero of heroes, killer of nations, bringer of peace. Like he's like the hero of British folklore. And
Wow.
why does that keep happening?
Wow.
Cut that part out. Okay, so then, so King Arthur is like the ultimate hero, and he's like the little, f up nephew who just can't get his life together. It's like if he was born into a family of doctors and lawyers, and he wasn't interested in going into going into that field, and everyone's
classic theme of privilege and all that. Yeah.
And in their case, in their culture, being a doctor or a lawyer is being an honorable knight, right? Like
with honor.
Yeah, like so going on a quest and being like a hero and getting your honor,
finding the honor
and being brave. And Gawain was none of those things, and I think his mom knew that too, and she didn't like it, and she was like, I got to get this kid out of the house. Like I got to like trigger something for him to go become a man.
You think that's what happened?
Upon reading about the movie, I know that's what happened.
So the poem itself apparently kind of gives that away a little bit more. The movie is left a little bit more ambiguous, but it's also not, because right in the beginning, because of that whole ritual and everything and the way it's edited, you're like, yeah.
You know that it's connected.
Exactly. It's like she has some form of connection. It's done so...
But you don't know
dream-like.
What her intention is.
No.
So it's like, is she doing it to persuade her son into a quest and getting honor?
Right.
I didn't connect that dot.
Well, if I may, I was reading an interview with David Lowery. So whether the there's two things: the intention of the original poem, and then what David Lowery's interpretation and his intentions. So his intention was, he was talking about how most of the movie is about his relationship with his mom.
Really?
And he described himself as having failure to launch syndrome for most of his life. So like,
wow,
he just would he just couldn't get out of the house. He couldn't get his life going. And so he was a young adult still living with his mom, and his mom basically kicked him out of her house to get him to go start living his life as an adult. And so
that's wild.
In thinking of the movie through that lens now, you're like, oh, it was all about the mom.
Well, then it works with the original story, right? Like that is...
I think it's probably
Actually,
why...
Is it even his mom, though, in the original story? I haven't read it.
I can't remember.
It is.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, it is his mom.
I thought it was a sister.
Because apparently all through King Arthur folklore, him and his sister butt heads. His sister is like a witch, King Arthur's sister, Gawain's mom, and they like don't get along. And so she was always like sabotaging him.
Right, she's the sister of King Arthur. That's
right.
So I did connect the dots after watching it of, her intention. Obviously she's bringing the Green Knight, but I think that my question was, is she just trying to take over the throne?
I don't think so. I think
it makes sense.
Because I think she could have done that other ways. Like I think that she was really trying to get Gawain to amount to something. And I think that when you now look at the whole movie through that lens, you realize that she's pulling the strings of everything that he encounters along the way.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, let's talk about the stuff along the way, because we're jumping almost to the conclusion.
So he hits the road. One thing that's of note.
Yeah, it jumps over that year. It says one very short year.
Right. Yeah. Because
what about the puppet stuff? Do you guys like the puppets?
That was that was a clever.
It's clever
way.
It's tongue in cheek.
It was a clever way of showing the passing of time and
showing that this has had an impact on their culture, community and their culture. Is they're showing like the little almost like legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Like they're doing a little like puppet show of that scene that we just watched, like a goofy version of it.
And he it already within just a year had started to become like a mythology, like because it was already not realistic. Like, you slayed the mighty Green Knight, and little did those people know the dude got on his knees and let him cut his head off. So like, Gawain didn't do anything heroic. He just stood up and said, "Give me this sword, I'll cut the guy's head off," basically. Yeah. And then in that bar scene, someone says, "Yeah, but his mom's a witch," and then he fights the guy, and you can just tell he's still a drunk. He's still partying. Like, he hasn't grown at all in that year leading up to the night. And like, and again, failure to launch. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, think about where, like, you should be preparing. You should be, you know what I mean? And I think, to me,
do you think he had Jordan Peterson videos to watch?
Probably not. And I think that's David Lowery being like, just wasting time, not thinking about the future, not preparing for
That's
what's to
interesting.
come. Like you're just wasting. And so then it's like he lets that clock just keep ticking until it's like it's procrastinating, you know? And it's like, dude, you have like you did something pretty serious, and like there's some stuff that's going to come up that you probably have to deal with, and you're just not doing anything. And then they had the scene with King Arthur where he's like, dude, they're like, in his mom, King Arthur, they're all there like, are you going to do something about this? Like winter's coming up and you're going to have to go, right?
Right. And then King Arthur basically convinces him to go because what is it that he kind of like, it's a little bit of a manipulation. He like basically says that you're going to be, it is all about honor.
It was about honor. It's like, dude, if
Yeah.
you don't go, you have no honor. Like this is your
Yeah.
chance to show the world that you have some honor, that you have some balls, and like,
Yeah.
and he was like, do you really think he's just like sitting there waiting for me? And King Arthur's like, well, you're gonna tell me when you come back.
Yeah.
It's like, just go, dude. You know, that's what it kind of
Yeah.
felt like. So
Yeah, like you're the one who like all the other knights were hesitant.
right, you got yourself into this. Go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he goes on the journey.
Well, first though, something that is important
sorry.
is that his mom makes him that belt sash thing and says, you know, I basically put some protective spells in this, and as long as you keep it around your waist, you won't get harmed.
I went to pee during that scene.
Oh, okay, so it's significant because it's another scene.
I know.
It's
I could tell as soon as I was walking back. I was like, I missed an important thing.
all right, so there's another.
Did you find out what it was?
I chose poorly.
Yeah.
So there's another scene.
Well, as you watch the movie, you find out what
Right.
it is. But yeah.
So much like the summoning of the Green Knight, you see her and her witch friends like putting enchantments on this thing and like sewing it, like you can tell it's special.
Yeah.
And then she gives it to him and says, you know, keep this on you and you'll be okay. So then he leaves, and the first thing he does is he comes across this killing field from a recent war, just bodies everywhere, and there's just one kid who's alive, pillaging the bodies, and he basically interacts with this kid who I thought was an awesome actor, by the way.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember thinking
really
that
good.
too while I was watching it. I was
He's
like,
in some other stuff.
like whoever this guy is, he's crushing it.
Yeah,
Right now.
he says, "Yeah, I'm going to the Green Chapel to meet the Green Knight," and the kid's like, "Oh, you got to go that way. You got to go to the river," and that was basically the interaction. And then he goes into the towards the river, thinking that okay, this kid steered me in the right direction, and he gets jumped by thieves, and it was that kid who set him up.
Yeah.
So got his
Which
bu-
it's like, dude, I mean, you trusted him like that. It's
Yeah.
like, what do you expect? Well, before that, he asks for like payment for
Yeah,
sending
throws him a-
direction, and
throws him a
he
coin.
throws him one coin, and
Yeah.
he's just like, it wasn't enough.
wasn't enough.
Also, I forgot. So he has the axe, right, with him the whole time?
Oh, yeah. So when he kills the Green Knight,
The Green Knight picks his head up, and he leaves him the axe.
yeah, that was kind of the prize for if you can land a blow, you can keep my axe.
Yeah.
And then you're going to, yeah.
And so Gallon, again, he just keeps the axe in a trunk for a year.
Yeah.
So it's like, well,
So
what's
dumb.
the point, dude? You weren't like practicing with it or anything. So, so then he gets tied up, hogtied by these group of thieves. And in that moment when he's getting robbed, the kid cuts off the green sash and steals it from him. And then runs off with his horse and his axe. And he's just left bound under a tree in the woods alone.
Yeah, but the
And
kids
then-
don't take much else. It's
They
kind of
leave the
weird. It's
sword-
almost like they knew to take
Well,
the
again,
sash.
I think that all of it was, so like you could argue that he wasn't even in like the real world. Like he was in his
Right.
mom's mystical world,
Sure.
and she was just orchestrating.
There is definitely unreliable narrator stuff happening.
Yeah, so I think she was just orchestrating the events and putting these things in his path to test him. And so, yeah, she gave him outs, right? She left, the sword was still there, so he was able, because he had that really cool scene where the camera it's quiet and he's just laying there, and the camera does this really long, slow 360-degree pan, and by the time you get back to him, he's just a skeleton.
Yeah. No, in that moment, I legitimately was like, "Oh, I guess we're gonna follow a different character."
Me too. I was like,
guess
"Oh, so
he's-
it's
I
not
guess
about him."
He's done for, and then it keeps going and wraps back around to him being, and they tie it together, so it's one shot, and or appears to be, and then he's back. So it's sort of like giving you a little hint into his psyche.
His
like
mind.
if I lay here and I don't try to fight, I'm gonna just
gonna
rot. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really
I loved
an
that.
effective storytelling trick.
Well, it visually brought you to like where he
I was so confused. I was like, obviously he doesn't die. He's the main guy. Like he's from the
Don't show
poem.
me a skeleton, you liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is his mind. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well,
It was clever.
Well,
storytelling.
it was a hint at the climactic moment of the film, which we'll get back to. So
Totally.
Yeah. So then he is able to escape by cutting himself free with his sword that the thieves left for no good reason, and he continues on his way, stumbling through the woods. Now
He's all alone. Doesn't have a horse. Doesn't have an axe.
Yeah.
He's just like.
Yep.
He's a loser.
Which
Even more so
I
than
said
he
out
was.
I said out loud, like, dude, you didn't take the sword.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning at this point we have already seen the fox. I think the fox has kind of popped up.
The fox has popped up here and there. It's sort of like, yeah.
This fox is following him. We don't know why. So yeah, then he comes across a cabin in the woods, and he's like, "Oh, shelter for the night." And he goes in and finds that it's empty. Finds a comfy bed to lay in, and then he's awoken by a young woman in the middle of the night, being like, "Why are you in my bed?" This was the only scene that I was like, "Okay, this is scary." Like I was kind of creeped out in that scene, being
That was a really good scene.
Do we?
Let's not like
Go scene by scene?
recap the whole
Yeah.
movie. It's
Well, so that scene is kind of the moment where I was like, right, we're not watching a like grounded, like obviously we're not watching a grounded medieval story because we got the wacky character of the Green Knight and there's mysticism and whatever. I still felt like it was pretty grounded even just with that. I was like, okay, we're dealing with paganism and we're dealing with like almost like spiritual demonic entities or just like mysterious creatures and whatever. Like Lord of the Rings is like my favorite thing ever. I can go into like mystical medieval territory, but at this point it starts to feel like, okay, we're dealing with almost like the abstractions and like a folk tale like sort of thing where it's like there's not there's not a grounded reality.
It's like a lot of Greek mythology, like,
right?
Where like a character,
there's
the
a
hero
journey.
has to, encounter these series of trials.
Because the woman is basically like, I'm headless.
Yeah.
Fetch me my head, and he's like confused by this, and is like, do you have a head on your body? And she's like, it appears that I do. And then you start to be like, oh, okay, like there's all kinds of like interesting thematic elements being thrown at you that I for 1 second was like, you know what I mean? I was like, do I just kind of like sink into it? Do I just let it be what it is, or do I fight it? Because I felt a moment of just like I kind of was really with this guy in this like cool universe, and now it starts to feel like David Lynch-ish, which is weird for me to say like that would be negatively, but I started to be like, oh, like is this like
didn't fit for you.
This isn't what I thought.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
Be.
It's like, is this like poetic and like artsy fartsy and like every scene is just going to be some new weird trippy trial thing and
which it was.
But I chose in that moment to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna let this be what it is, and I'm glad I did, because from there's giants and there's just like all kinds of crazy stuff.
You had to make that decision,
and then
early.
he's like eating mushrooms.
that's like
and
halfway through.
He's tripping, and I know I can't even remember everything that he encounters. It's
But so at that point, because both of you guys didn't have any context for what the story was, what the myth was.
Right.
What was your expectation of where the story was going?
I thought that the Green Knight was like this creature that was forever set in time by like some sort of like curse set like since like the beginning of human beings, and everyone takes turns being him. And I thought he was gonna go and become the Green Knight, and that would be the joke. Is like, ha ha ha.
That's kind of good.
You suck. Like you came and did this whole thing. It's just a game. Remember the king says that. You now have to be doomed forever to do this. It felt like a kind of a childish folktale like that. I was like, okay, he's gonna become the Green Knight and be a big disappointment, and that'll be satisfying because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that's where the movie's going in my mind. And there are all these kind of weird creatures, and I took that as like, well, he eats like mushrooms. You don't know if he's like tripping, or maybe this is just supposed to be set in a spiritual medieval time frame that's saying like these things could have existed. Cool, I'm down. Like I like that idea, but I really I kept going back and forth of like, or not kept going back and forth, but at one point was like, oh, I guess I have to let go of the more grounded historical.
I want to
story.
share what I thought it was, but what did you think first?
So I definitely, I think they were so intentional on emphasizing this is a game. So when they say this is a game, they're saying this isn't real, right? Like this isn't real life. It's just a game. Because King Arthur says that to him before. He's like, remember, it's all a game.
Yeah.
And so it's like no matter what you see, no matter what you come across, remember it's not real. That's what that meant to me.
Yeah.
And so right from the jump, I'm like, this dude's not gonna experience like real world. One moment leads to the next, and you know what I mean.
Sure.
And so
it's gonna feel like an abstract dream.
right. And so to me, it was almost like the movie The Game with like David Fincher, or like someone or something is pulling strings.
Yeah.
And you are just in the game, and it's like video game, like you had to get from one level to the next.
Yeah, but it's all orchestrated.
It's all, you're not in control. You can only control your choices in the game. And that's what I was getting from the start of the first kind of like, well, okay.
I just took that as the act of the Green Knight doing his thing as a game, and I took that as like almost like they're doomed to just do this because he just seems kind of apprehensive. You know, he's just sort of just like, I'm gonna do this thing. You cut my head off, so one of your hands, I'm gonna cut your head off.
Yeah.
One of your heads.
And I think where it really set into me that I was like, okay, this is all just someone manipulating. And in my mind, it was the mom from the start.
Yeah.
Was when he, passed the level of getting the girl her head back, and then the axe appeared.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that means that the whole thing with the kid, that wasn't a real kid. That wasn't a real thing. Like, he has no connection. It's not like that kid came and dropped the axe off.
Yeah, he did. That kid cuts the girl's head off.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because she says there was a boy just like you, a wanderer who came here before, and then he tried to have his way with me, and I fought him,
and then he cut my head off.
So I took that as that kid was the thief. I was still trying to make it make sense.
But why would the axe be there? Like because
He left it.
Yeah, but
she fought him off, and he ran away. And
no,
he
I know,
left
but we would have seen the axe. Like what I'm saying is
he took the axe.
No, I know, but I'm saying
No, I know.
No, you don't know.
So okay, so either
That's what I was thinking. I don't know if
I don't think you're not wrong. I think it's totally possible, but I don't think that the movie required that each of these things be connected that way.
I don't know why, man, because I'm usually really into like the more abstract stuff.
Because think about it.
It felt so.
There's like ways to reason.
It just felt
even
so
the
grounded.
even the lighting changed when he like passed that trial. So like it was dark. It was like he was like in this small dark where the whole universe was basically the area around that cabin.
Yeah.
And it was just you couldn't see anything. And then when he like saved her, he wakes up on the ground and it's bright and cheery again. And it's like the universe
Such
expanded.
a good description.
And the axe is in the middle of the room where he would have seen it. You know what I mean? It's like here's your reward for passing the level.
It is kind of video gamey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was, and thank God I wasn't thinking that at the time. That would have taken me out of it.
And then he's like, oh, I got my token for beating the boss, and now I'm going to move on to the next level. And
all right.
Very much, yeah. It's accurate.
So,
but it's structured that way because it makes sense. Like that's following the pattern that they set even in the poem. So it's like it may feel video gamey, and we're familiar with that structure.
Well, video games are derivative of myths.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so and then he goes to the house and he meets.
So this for me, the whole. It's so funny.
Did you check out?
No, I was checked in the whole time. I was very engaged, and I liked the movie a lot.
Yeah.
Because of my history with it, and I always liked it. But the thing that was throwing me off was my memory, like my half little memories of trying to remember what the story was, and anticipating little things. Like I remembered. Actually, no, I didn't remember the headless girl, but I remembered like the castle, and he gets to the castle.
Sure. What about the giants?
They weren't significant in this.
So none of us have read the poem, and Tori has read the poem. I was hoping that she would see the movie so she could be a part of this, but she didn't. So none of us know what's going on with the poem, but I did look up like one thing about it, and the poem is kind of backwards to what the story of the film is in this,
which is my biggest disappointment with the movie.
It is. Okay, I was wondering about that. So I don't know if now is a good time to bring up, but the pentagram star that everyone has on their necklaces, basically, and in those medieval times they represented the 5 virtues of knighthood. Right. So there'd be friendship, generosity,
I researched all
chastity,
this as well.
courtesy, and piety. And in the poem, I guess he succeeds in
all of them
in
except
nobility
one.
through all of these, except for the end. And in this, he sucks and he loses on everything. Friendship. Well, he throws this guy a coin and then he like betrays him, and he's like very flippant. Or wait, no, friendship would have been before that. And that would have been probably for generosity. Chastity, well, what happens with the woman in the castle?
The most disappointing part.
Well, I would also just tie in the chastity one is a really interesting thing that they did, because they used Alicia Vikander for both his girlfriend at home and the
girlfriend at home, he's clearly very just kind of like shrugs off.
Well, I think he likes her, but he clearly likes her, and she asked him.
But he's just a passive dude. Like he just doesn't make decisions.
Also,
she's trying to make like an actual commitment with him.
Yeah, and she's like, "Do you love me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I love you." But
she's basically like, "Will you propose to me?" And he's just like looking forward, just kind of like zoning out.
Yeah,
and
totally blows her off.
Yeah, and then the other woman is very like.
Right. So I think
educated
the mom, as a test of his chastity, or one of those virtues, I think put in his path the ideal version of the girl that he really loves, because the lady is this wealthy, beautiful. She's on his level in terms of class. Yeah. And the classism thing was the major thing.
She's actually above him in a lot of ways. She's basically pointing out, I've read all of these books. Like she's flexing, being like, I am far more educated than you because you're just lazy.
Yeah. So the girl, the village version of Alicia Vikander is like below his station.
Totally.
And the classism is probably the thing that he's most like, I'm a knight. I'm not
allowed. I can't do this.
Yeah, like
for my pride.
I'm royalty and you're a peasant, and it's not gonna work. And so love be damned. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
So then she puts in his path the perfect version of that woman, and sees if it's like just the major temptation.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, because why else use?
It's probably accurate for the movie.
Yeah.
But for me, knowing the story, I didn't see it that way, and I didn't really. I don't know. I didn't actually recognize that it was the same girl at first.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a choice to use the same actress.
It bothered me so much. I was just like, come on. Like,
really?
Yeah, because it's like, what are the chances? Like, I wasn't thinking about it being like almost this test, or almost this could have been like a fantasy person. It could have been a dream. It could, you know what I mean? Like, I was still feeling like it was very grounded, but I was just like, I immediately recognized her. And I was just annoyed because I'm like, what are the chances? It's gonna be like,
so funny. I didn't
exactly
even
the same. Like, it's so dumb. But then I'm like, okay, I gotta take this more as
think about the mom. Think about the mom being the puppet master.
Yeah, I know.
All these trials. Well, and then I
was trying to just experience it as it was happening, and I was just kind of like, what? Like, why is she? What? You? What?
Because I think what the mom was testing him in there was, are you a good guy? Like, are you actually loyal to the woman you love, or is it all about you?
And then it comes the really awkward scene.
Right, because she was like, why didn't you come to my bedchamber, right? And he's like, well, I wanted to, but it's not right. And she's like, are you sure? And she tempts him. She seduces him to like, breaking him down. And then when he gives in, she's like, you're not a knight at all. Yeah. Meaning like a knight would have turned me down outright, because you would have stood up for what's right, for what's chaste, for what's noble. And
I took it more as like dissing him sexually.
Oh, well, Oh, so what? If,
No,
if
no.
so, what if he was a knight?
I
He
mean,
would have rocked
maybe
the
both.
world. If you were a knight, you would have.
I don't know.
You wouldn't have done that in your hand.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it. I took it as like a blow to his like manhood.
Well,
like,
also
It kind of is.
think about though, it's definitely his mom, which is weird that she tempted her son into going that way because
No, isn't the mom the grandma?
The blindfolded
that's like just like
woman.
watching everything.
I think the mom is everybody. Is my point. I think the mom is every character.
Nah.
Yeah, dude. Because think about the lady. She tells him.
No,
nah.
Think about
it's not possible.
she's
impossible.
she's the engineer pulling all the strings and creating all these characters and putting them in his path as challenges. And
But these characters exist on their own.
Yeah,
is-
Because who's the guy like Joel Edgerton's
Okay,
character?
so this was
he was in the beginning. He was there.
Where?
He is in the round table.
no way.
He is.
I don't remember that.
There are shots of him in the round table, quick shots, but he's there. And he even says like I witnessed what happened and like whatever. And he's just kind of like lazy and just chills out like and he doesn't really push the story forward a whole lot.
Did you read about what it is, who he is in the poem though?
No.
So in the poem, and this was the thing that I kept waiting for the whole time, he is the Green Knight.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I was so excited about that twist happening in the movie because I thought that was a really fascinating part. It's like he lives in this castle. He has this beautiful wife.
He's definitely done up in the makeup. I think Joel Edgerton does play the Green Knight like
You think
in
so?
the movie. He definitely looks like him.
I was wondering, but
We'll have to look that up.
Can I-
Actually, let
so-
me
they left it ambiguous in the movie, and I
Here-
wanted that reveal
Here's
really
a really
badly.
fascinating. So, in the interview with David Lowery, he addresses it.
Okay.
He addresses the differences between the actual poem and then what he chose to do.
Okay.
So,
I think I saw or heard the interview where he's like,
I'm wrong. Green Knight is played by Ralph Ineson, and
But-
Joel Edgerton just plays Lord.
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 I'm going for a hunt. Had you come here one
his
week hence,
character
this
is-
house would have been empty.
This character is so weird.
I know, he's such a d-bag.
Oh,
And then he like kisses him goodbye.
And he just
everything.
loves hunting so much.
me
hilarious.
too.
I'm gonna hunt some more.
Nah.
Yeah.
How was your day? I'm going hunting. So,
I know.
okay, let me just take 2 steps back.
Say it.
So the lady, the fancy Alicia Vikander, after they have their sexually charged moment, what is in his hand but the green sash, the protective sash?
Not the only thing is
Right, with just a stain on it. And
that up close shot.
I know, I was like,
I cracked up. I like broke. I was like, wow, guys.
and she says verbatim the same line to him about the sash that his mom does. As long as you wear this, no harm will fall upon you, or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh, it's the mom. She's the mom. The mom is everybody. Like, so,
Sure.
and
We'll run with it for now.
and he failed that test of whatever the chastity, nobility, and then he continues
I mean,
on, and
who can resist?
I know.
Only the
I like
most
that.
noble
I
knights.
love your theory that she was like, "Wow, that was some weak stuff." like that. Like the
Wow, you lasted like a minute.
yeah. The test was just it was just a test of endurance.
No. I could go into it more, but let's skip over.
You're no knight at all, you little
That's what I
sissy boy. The Lord rocks my world compared to you. But he's always hunting.
The Green Knight takes care of me.
Oh God. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
I just yeah.
So then this was a little weird for me was the exchange between him and the Lord in the woods when he was like, I gotta get out of here. I'm moving on, and I'm done with our deal and everything. And he had the fox in the bag, and he was like, I was gonna give this to you, but I guess I'll just let him go now that you don't want to hang out anymore and be friends. Because it seemed like maybe that was the test of friendship. Because the Lord was like, he was all about their friendship.
I think so.
And they made a deal, and then he was like, I'm done with. I don't care about our deal. Like, screw your deal.
Yeah.
And he would have given him the sash. I think would have been the trade. Because remember, the
Right, because that's what he was really given was the sash from
the house.
the wife.
Yeah, he says, anything that you get in this house, let's make a deal. Anything that you get here, give to me, and I'll give you anything I get from the woods. And he's like, well, what would I get here that's not already yours? And he's like, this house has many mysteries. And, so what he ultimately physically gets from the house is that sash, that protective sash.
And he would have given
which is
it.
significant because the whole climax of the movie hinges on that sash.
Right.
So then he doesn't do the trade, and the fox then warns him.
You don't want to go down that river.
No, the fox doesn't have like the crazy voice, the creepy voice.
Yeah, it does. Dude, the fox's voice is the narrator in the beginning.
Come on.
Totally is.
It's a little bit more high pitched.
Maybe
It is a little raspy.
It's the same
Yeah,
one.
he goes down the river and he finally gets to
The Green Knight.
Well, the church is all covered in vines. It's like perfect. It's like
Yeah.
so. It's
So
like exactly what I
beautiful.
envisioned. And then he gets there, and the Green Knight has almost been just letting himself get overtaken by
He's overgrown.
Yeah, exactly. And
And he spends a whole, I don't
Day.
know how long that was. Was it
whole
a
day.
day?
he just sits there, and you just watch the time go by, and like days.
And there's that creepy moment where the knight's just opening, his eyes are open, but he doesn't move. I'm like, oh, he's going to stand up eventually. And then he's like, doesn't.
Yeah.
And then, and then finally it's daylight and he wakes up. He's like, oh, you're here.
Yeah.
You came.
Well, I would have been like,
Dude.
hey.
Yeah.
Buddy.
And then it's finally time to pay his debt, blow for a blow, and he sisses out in the worst way.
Well, I mean,
imaginable.
come on, dude. It's that at that moment I was like, that's so relatable. Like how he's just like, yeah, no, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
No, I'm doing it. Like as soon as he lifts
Yeah,
it, because the Green Knight's doing it. His demeanor is changed at this point. He's just kind of like, oh yeah, has it been like a year? All right.
Yeah. Oh, I guess.
And he's
we're
just
done.
like, whoa, wait, isn't there anything else? He's just like,
what else should there be?
what else would there be?
Yeah.
Whoa, wait.
Yeah. Because in his
just like,
mind,
what?
in his mind, I'm sure he's like, well, this is all a game. So what's the payout?
He's like,
where's the?
1 year hence, I'm gonna chop your head. You chop
He's
my
like,
head
this
off.
is the game. There's nothing else. And
But
that-
the Green Knight's not as like ominous, and he's just kind of like, all right, let's just do
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
and
that
I
was
think,
funny.
And I think that is, I think in our minds we think like where he was at was very like, yeah, that makes sense, dude. Like you're just gonna get your head chopped off, like just get out of there. But I think in the culture, it's like, no, you get your head chopped off. That's the honorable thing to do. You made a deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
um,
Well, so then we go seeing his whole life, right? His whole life.
so he runs
after-
away. He runs away.
He runs away, and we get to see his whole life for becoming king and having a child, and then his child dying, and it's going through this whole like montage so quickly. You're like,
Did you
oh
think
my
that was
God.
really happening? All of that?
Of course.
I
I was
did.
like,
I was so like.
I was on board. I
was
did,
shocked.
I did think they skipped through the journey back and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, but they're just wrapping up. Like, let's see what this experience did to him
That was so
as he
crazy.
runs away. And then it has this really epic moment of like, okay, someone's like an enemy's banging down his door, and he is just like giving up. He's like his son dies in battle, and he.
Well, let's talk about how he steals his son from the woman.
Yeah, I mean,
betrays her
he
ultimately.
he becomes
horrible.
a terrible man. He's
Worst-
a terrible
yeah.
king. He's not kind to his people.
No honor, no virtue.
His life is just
no
his-
virtues.
His
none
life
of
is
the five.
misery, and you think that it's just going to be like, all right, you're going to die. Your life is misery, and then it's the enemy's knocking on the door. I'm assuming it's going to be the Green Knight. Back for just like, you remember me? You ran away, and it took me years to get back here because I'm just like just getting slow in my old age. And
Because I'm a tree.
and then the door like blasts open. He pulls the green sash out from his belt, like under his armor, which he's been wearing this whole time, and his head falls off. And you're like, okay, so the Green Knight did cut his head off, and he was wearing the thing, so it protected him, and he had to leave that around him all this time. Wait, no, we just got to see this whole flash forward in his imagination, and it was just all in his head. That moment from,
And he
from him
finally
running
saw
away.
the
And-
consequences
Yeah.
of his actions.
He saw what being a coward would result in.
Yeah,
and
having no virtue leads to a life that's not worth living.
So he goes, no, I'm ready now. And the Green Knight says, well done, my brave knight. now off with your head, and smirks. And then it cuts to
and then he takes the sash.
that's right. He's
off.
ready to actually get his head chopped off to look legitimately.
Which was the last test of his mom was like, are you gonna, I gave you the get out of jail free card. You could be like immortal, but to do that would to forsake anything that's honorable. And so
the honor is facing your death fully without fear.
I mean, maybe you're still fearful, but you just choose to do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, keeping your word.
In the face of fear.
And here's the thing. I think in the poem, he does die. He gets his head chopped off by the Green Knight.
I don't think so.
No, I think it does.
I do know that he wins every... He
wins all of them except for
all the virtues he does well.
Except for the
except
sash.
For the last one.
Which he's supposed to give to the Green Knight as the Lord, but he doesn't give it to him. He only in the poem, sorry, the wife keeps giving him like kisses every night, and then he goes and he gives those to the Lord, and he doesn't say anything about it, but he does it like two times. Then the third time she gives him the sash, he takes it, doesn't give it to him, gives him another kiss, and then goes to the Green Knight. But I can't remember what actually happens if he chops and doesn't die. I think that's what I remember, but
we'll have to.
I'm 99% sure that
I should have read it before this podcast.
I'll look at it.
I was just kind of interested in just like, does this make sense on its own as like a film? And for me, that ending was so satisfying for me because it felt like all this like ominous lore that's hanging over you in your life is just a game, and ultimately it's like it's all about like having actual bravery and not just like this like silly idea of it for really just like surface level gain. And I felt like that was so powerful of the Green Knight himself just kind of being like, good job, now off with your head. Like it's like this sort of like Alice in Wonderland joke.
It's like, hey, you found your honor, good for you.
Yeah, and then it's just like, all right, and then are we to assume that he cuts his head off after that? Like I don't think so. I think that's the whole thing. Is just like this has been a game, but if you were to be in fear, then your life would have no value almost, and I would have actually beheaded you. And so that's what's so twisted. Yeah. That's so twisted about it. Is it's like you actually had to face it without fear for me to be like, good job. Now you get to just keep living.
Yeah. So
it's like, it's so good.
This was, okay, I just read it.
What happens in the poem?
And this is, I think, I really respect David Lowery's version, but it is wrong. And that did make me sad, or I disappointed in my initial watching, but maybe in a second watch, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, now that it's not like such
fully.
a shock.
Yeah, but it definitely, it wasn't what I remembered, and what I remembered was right. So he does two fake swings, the Green Knight, and he flinches, and then he shames them or whatever. It's like kind of what happens.
He nicks him.
And then the third swing, he goes for the chop, but it's only a nick. It cuts his neck, but doesn't chop it off.
And wasn't it kind of in the poem? Wasn't he kind of like, it was almost like a joke to the Green Knight? He was kind of like, haha, like.
Yeah, and he's like, you actually got cut a little bit because you lied to me. Like the only reason that you actually got cut was because you didn't give the sash.
Okay.
But if you had given the sash, you wouldn't have died. And so then they both are like, ha, that's funny, and then they part on cordial terms, it says. and it's revealed that the Green Knight is the Lord and all that.
See, this is the thing, is like some things translate really well in a poem or in a book or in an illustrated book, and some things don't translate well in film. And like those changes, like I just finished Return of the King and thinking about like the whole scourging of the Shire thing. Like, have you read Return of the King, the book? Like there's whole scenes that are cut out, whole chapters that are cut out of the movie. But you're like, oh, what would the movie be like if suddenly after all this epic battle and all this crazy stuff, they go back to the Shire and then they have to just like fight off all these like ruffians? You'd be like, what is this? Like, it would be really weird. But in the book, it's like, oh, this is great. And like, it doesn't, there's just certain things that like, I'm glad that he made it his own, but it makes me very interested in what he's doing next. Do you know what he's doing next?
Right.
No, what?
He's doing Peter Pan.
Wait, before we move on to Peter Pan.
Well, we got to wrap soon, but Peter Pan, bless you. Peter Pan and Wendy, it's called, and it is a legitimate Disney film. He has done Disney stuff, so I'm like, okay,
Pete's
I guess
Dragon.
this isn't totally out of left field, but like he said it's his version, and he's very excited.
Green Dragon.
He said he's very proud of this more than anything he's done, and it's his version of Peter Pan and Wendy. So I'm like, okay, if the Green Knight was like his version of the story, and he changed a lot, how much is he gonna change? I wonder for like Peter Pan and Wendy, because that's a story that is very close to my heart, always has been, and there's never been a good live action Peter Pan. Hook was awesome, but that's like a different
own story.
reinterpretation, retelling. That's like what I grew up on. But it makes me really excited for like.
I'm interested. I have no expectations.
I have high expectations. After the visuals in the Green Knight, like seeing Neverland through this guy's imagination is going to be crazy.
The visuals will be dope.
Yeah,
I wonder if it'll be.
I hope.
it will be.
Because like obviously Neverland is a very right from the jump fantastical, no questions asked there.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if it'll feel like a more ground. So whereas this felt like a more fantastical version of what we were expecting, if this will feel like a more real grounded Peter Pan.
I do think it'll feel kind of grounded because he proved that he can do something really fantastical and still have it feel convincing and real with the Green Knight. And
grounding moments of seeing goats and geese fight.
20 minutes of duck on goat
it's
action.
not 20 minutes. It's like a couple minutes. Also, though, like the house,
It just feels long.
the house that's burning in the background in the beginning with that. Like, what was that?
Oh,
Do you remember that?
No.
I forgot about that.
It keeps cutting. It'll cut to like the credits, and then it'll cut back to that shot with the farm animals, and there'll be a fire in the background and like a barn, and it'll be more flames every time they cut back to it. It's really cool, but then all of a sudden it just cuts to him in the brothel, and you're like, "What? Who was on fire?"
Damn, I guess I'll have to go back because that's interesting.
You gotta watch it again.
I'm disappointed about Peter Pan and Wendy because it's not the same cinematographer. Andrew Dole something.
What did he do? The
Pete's Dragon.
Did he do Ghost Story?
So this guy Andrew, he was the DP for Ghost Story and Green Knight. But
it's not him.
It's not him.
Well, come on. I mean,
And he's the only good cinematographer. So.
He's the only one. So
maybe we'll realize that the real genius was Laurie. That's the thing with DPs. It's like there's some who they get all the credit.
They add a
but
lot,
it's really
and then
the director who does all the work. And then there's others where it's like the director is just kind of working with the actor, and the DP is like making the magic happen. You know, it's visually. I mean,
You're right.
All right. Well, in
and
summary,
then there's directors who literally are like, you know, Stanley Kubrick and Spartacus, who didn't even let the DP do his job. He was just like, no, I'm going to pick up the camera and I'm going to make every shot.
So what's your guys' rating of the Green Knight?
Oh, are we rating it?
Or just biggest takeaway? What's your...
My biggest takeaway, I think I already said, but overall I was kind of blown away by it. Like when you texted me about it and you were like, I watched the Green Knight, I have thoughts or something, whatever you said. I was like, in my head, I'm like, if you weren't blown away, I don't even want to talk to you, because I was blown away. The only thing that was like slightly, just watch Green Knight and then you just have two gifts.
it explained exactly how I felt.
It's the little girl one,
little confused girl,
and then it's the pretty good Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I was like, that seems like you only kind of liked it, and for me, unless you loved it, I wasn't interested. But no, in summary, I loved every single aspect of it. I thought it was perfect, except for the CGI fox. I was kind of disappointed. Not that it was CGI. Funny. It was really good CGI. It was Weta. It was really good. It was just everything else felt so real. And then it was just CGI, like this little fox. And you're like, all right.
Well, except for the giants.
The giants were worse than the fox.
What do you mean? They were real people. The giants were real people.
Nah, the giants looked terrible.
That's like old school special effect technology.
I don't know why I didn't like it. Took me out of it so much.
Really? No, the giants didn't bother me. The fox bothered me because it's just all fake fox, especially when it is talking. But that's like the smallest of complaints. The rest of the film, if if I had to rate it, I would rate it probably 9 out of 10.
I liked it a lot, and then I was definitely into it and compelled by it when watching.
Upon research.
But then when I read about it, I was like, okay, this movie just got a lot better. That always happens for me. Is once I dive in after the fact and I start to get into the nuance and like the director's thoughts, I'm like, oh, it's so much better than I thought, because you can't.
There's so much intention that you don't pick up on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely like, and then like reframing the whole movie through his relationship with his mom made it way more meaningful.
And defining the 5 virtues is really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I guess we did all feel like we needed to look up stuff about it, which is
sign of a good movie.
But I mean, I didn't get to talk about this movie for like like over a week.
Yeah.
I'm just like in the woods alone after this. I'm driving back. I'm like, I'm going to go to a campsite by myself. And I listened to the soundtrack all the next day driving around the mountains. God. It was like a great day.
Oh, I guess we didn't also honorable mention to the soundtrack. Amazing soundtrack.
The soundtrack is honestly like a masterpiece. I've listened to it several times on its own. And I mean, if you just want to get into a zone, baby, it's like, it will zone you out. It's really epic. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. But I don't know. I was interested in like the themes, and if it stood on its own, I feel like it does.
Yeah, it does stand on its own.
I feel like I took away things from it in a way that didn't feel like spoon feeding, but I got the message, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it felt really like intensely impactful in that moment of my life, and I think I just because I saw it alone and I was reflecting on it, and I was like in the woods for like a week. It definitely had like, I was thinking about it. It was the only movie I watched that week. It was the only bit of like screen time that I got. Right. Yeah. So it was very like, oh man, this is like special.
Yeah.
So I was curious if that was just me or if it was like that, if it was that impactful.
No, it's really good. I think that my takeaway is just that I'm so drawn to stories about, overcoming the personal struggles in your life and nobility and true nobility. So I was kind of disappointed that he changed it to him failing so much and being such a, generally a failure.
Yeah.
Because that's what I loved about the original story, was that he was the one that, of all of the knights at the round table, he was the one that was like the most noble.
Sure.
And
really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I always when I just was reading a little bit about it, and I thought what I read was that Gawain was kind of the anti-Arthur, because like Arthur was basically Superman, like always overcame every challenge and always dominated, and then this guy was kind of like.
But at least, I mean, so like Lancelot, slept with everybody, and then Gawain was like, at least he was noble and respecting women.
Well, I mean, these are all just myths and tales.
No, dude, it's real freaking life.
Yeah, but like, what do we know about these people if they actually existed? Like not much, right? They're flawed humans.
They wrote poems about them, so
yeah.
So they were perfect. What about you, Cody?
He already said.
I mean, I really liked it, and really liked it more upon reading and reflection.
Yeah,
I'll give it a 8.7.
8.7. I say a 9. What do you say?
I mean, it's an 8.5 for visuals alone. So.
All right. Well, there's not that many movies that inspire us to talk about them. So,
I mean, there's a lot.
It's got to be worth something.
This is the last song of the movie.
See you later, Mike. See you later, Cody.
It's very Christmassy.
Fare thee well and have merry.
It's been good talking with you guys.
And this is not that king.
Please subscribe.